The wrestling world just got shaken to its core, and what happened between Bayley and Jade Cargill has everyone talking for all the wrong reasons. This isn't just another backstage drama or typical wrestling beef. This is about a storyline that was supposed to be huge getting completely torn apart before it even had a chance to breathe. If you want to see how badly things can go wrong in professional wrestling and how one superstar's problems can derail an entire creative direction, you need to stick around because what went down is absolutely wild. And hey, if you're loving this kind of inside wrestling content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss when we break down the biggest stories in the business. Let me set the stage for you. Bayley has been one of the most reliable performers in the company for years. She's done everything from being the lovable hugger to becoming one of the most ruthless heels in recent memory. Her work with Damage Control put her back on top and reminded everyone why she deserves to be in main event conversations. But here's where things get complicated. Behind the scenes, there have been whispers about Bayley's conduct in certain situations that have put her in hot water with management. We're not talking about minor issues here. These are the kind of problems that make executives nervous and force creative teams to rethink everything they had planned. Now entered Jade Cargill. She came to the company with massive expectations after making a huge name for herself elsewhere. She's got the look, she's got the presence, and she's got that star quality that makes casual fans stop and pay attention. When she arrived, everyone knew big things were planned for her. The company invested heavily in building her up and making sure she looked like a legitimate powerhouse. Her pairing with Bianca Belair in the tag team division was just the beginning. The long-term plan was always to position her for something much bigger. That's where this storyline with Bayley was supposed to come in. The original pitch was brilliant on paper. Bayley and Jade were going to engage in a major program that would elevate both women and create one of those rivalries people remember for years. The idea was to use Bayley's veteran status and storytelling ability to help Jade develop her character work while also giving Bayley a high-profile opponent who could make her look dangerous. Creative had mapped out multiple months of television with beats and moments designed to get the audience invested. There were plans for shocking betrayals, intense confrontations, and a series of matches that would showcase both women at their absolute best. This was supposed to be the program that took Jade to the next level and reminded everyone that Bayley is still one of the best in the game. But then everything started falling apart. The trouble Bayley found herself in became too significant to ignore. Details remain murky because the company has been tight-lipped about the specifics, but multiple sources have confirmed that there were serious concerns about moving forward with her in a major storyline. This wasn't about her in-ring ability or even her character work. This was about real-world issues that made executives question whether she should be featured prominently on television at all. When you're a publicly traded company with sponsors and partners to answer to, these kinds of problems can't just be swept under the rug. Management had to make a call about whether the risk was worth the potential reward. That's when everything changed for Jade Cargill. She was already locked into this program with Bayley. Creative had pitched her on the storyline, told her how it would unfold, and got her excited about the possibilities. She had started preparing for the character direction and thinking about how she would approach the matches. Then suddenly she gets told that the entire thing is being scrapped. Not postponed, not adjusted, completely thrown out. You can imagine how frustrating that must have been. Here's a performer who came to the company with huge momentum, who has been waiting for her breakout singles moment, and now the rug gets pulled out from under her through no fault of her own. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Instead of just accepting whatever backup plan creative threw together, Jade Cargill spoke up. She made it clear that she wasn't interested in just taking whatever scraps were left over from the failed Bayley program. She had thoughts about her own character direction and where she wanted to go next. This is where her mindset shifted in a major way. Rather than being the performer who just does what she's told and hopes for the best, she started advocating for herself and pushing for creative input into her own storyline. That kind of agency is rare in professional wrestling, especially for someone who hasn't been with the company for years and years. The conversations that followed were intense. Jade went to the decision makers and laid out her vision for what she wanted to do next. She didn't want another tag team program. She didn't want to be stuck in the middle of someone else's storyline. She wanted something that would position her as a legitimate single star with her own identity separate from anyone else. She argued that she had proven herself in the ring and on the microphone enough to deserve that opportunity. More importantly, she made the case that the audience was ready to see her in that role. The reaction she had been getting suggested that fans wanted to see more of her, and keeping her in a holding pattern would be a waste of momentum. Management found themselves in a difficult position. On one hand, they had just lost a major storyline that was supposed to fill television time and create compelling content. On the other hand, they had a rising star who was actively campaigning for a bigger role and presenting ideas that actually made sense. The easy thing would have been to just slot Jade into a random feud with whoever was available and call it a day. But that would have been short-sighted. If she's going to be a cornerstone of the division moving forward, which is clearly the plan, then giving her something meaningful to work with now could pay dividends down the road. So they went back to the drawing board. New ideas started getting pitched. Different opponents were considered. Various storyline directions were mapped out and debated. The goal was to find something that would work for Jade while also making sense for the overall direction of the women's division. This wasn't just about plugging a hole in the schedule anymore. It became about figuring out the best way to capitalize on Jade's momentum and turn her into the star everyone believes she can be. The pressure was on creative to come up with something good, and come up with it fast. What they eventually landed on represents a major shift from the original plan. Instead of working with an established veteran in a traditional rivalry, Jade is now heading in a direction that will showcase her as a dominant force in her own right. The new program they've designed for her focuses less on back-and-forth storytelling and more on establishing her as someone who runs through the competition. It's a different approach that plays to her strengths and doesn't require the kind of nuanced character work that would have been necessary in the Bayley feud. Some people within the company think this is actually a better fit for where Jade is in her development. Others worry that it might be too one-dimensional and won't give her the depth she needs to connect with audiences long-term. The fallout from all of this extends beyond just Jade and Bayley. Other performers who were supposed to be involved in adjacent storylines now find themselves in limbo. Creative plans that were built around the assumption that Bayley would be in a certain spot on the card have had to be completely reimagined. Tag team plans got shifted. Potential challengers for various titles had to be reconsidered. The ripple effects of one major storyline getting scrapped touched almost every corner of the women's division. That's how interconnected modern wrestling booking has become. You can't just pull out one piece without affecting everything else around it. For Bayley, the situation is complicated and uncertain. Her future with the company remains unclear as management works through whatever issues led to this decision in the first place. There are questions about when or if she'll return to a prominent role on television. Some believe this is a temporary setback and she'll bounce back once things get resolved. Others think this could be the beginning of a longer-term problem that might never fully get fixed. The reality is that until the company makes an official statement or takes definitive action, everyone is just speculating based on incomplete information and backstage whispers. What makes this entire situation so fascinating is how it exposes the fragile nature of wrestling storytelling. Fans see the finished product on television and assume everything is planned out months in advance with every detail locked in. The truth is that things change constantly behind the scenes. Injuries happen. Personal issues arise. Creative differences emerge. Performers get into trouble. All of these factors can force sudden changes that alter the entire landscape of the show. The fact that a major program can get completely scrapped just weeks before it was supposed to begin shows just how volatile the creative process really is. The other fascinating element here is watching Jade Cargill navigate this situation. A less confident performer might have just accepted whatever they were given and been grateful for any opportunity. But Jade recognized that this moment of chaos was actually an opportunity. When the original plan fell apart, it created an opening for her to have input into her own direction. By speaking up and presenting her own ideas, she demonstrated the kind of business savvy that separates good performers from true stars. She understood that her value to the company gave her leverage, and she used that leverage to try and steer her character in the direction she wanted to go. The question now becomes whether this new direction will actually work. Wrestling history is full of examples where Plan B turned out better than Plan A. Sometimes the unexpected changes force creative teams to think outside the box and come up with ideas they never would have considered otherwise. Other times, the scrambling leads to half-baked ideas that don't connect with audiences and end up being forgotten within a few months. Only time will tell which category this situation falls into. What we do know is that Jade Cargill will get her chance to prove herself in a new role, and how she performs in that spot will have major implications for her career trajectory. There's also the bigger question of what this says about the current state of the women's division. This kind of major disruption happening at this level suggests there might be some underlying issues with how things are being managed. When a cornerstone storyline can get pulled apart this quickly, it raises questions about the stability of the booking philosophy and whether there's a clear long-term vision in place. Fans have noticed that the women's division has felt somewhat directionless at times, with storylines starting and stopping without clear resolutions. This Bayley and Jade situation is just the latest example of that pattern playing out behind the scenes. The performers themselves have to be watching all of this unfold with a mixture of concern and curiosity. If a major program can get scrapped this easily, what does that mean for their own storylines? How secure can anyone feel about their position when circumstances can change so dramatically and so quickly? The uncertainty has to be unsettling, especially for newer performers who are still trying to establish themselves and build their brand. The veterans who have been through this kind of chaos before probably handle it better, but even they have to wonder where they fit into a constantly shifting landscape. What happens next will be crucial for everyone involved. Jade needs her new program to succeed and justify the company's faith in her as a top star. The creative team needs to prove they can pivot effectively when plans fall apart and still deliver compelling television. Management needs to resolve whatever issues exist with Bayley and determine what role she'll play moving forward. And the fans need to see that the women's division has a coherent direction that makes sense and keeps them invested in the characters and storylines. All of these pieces have to come together for this situation to turn into something positive rather than just being remembered as a chaotic mess that could have been avoided. The wrestling business has always been unpredictable, but this situation with Bayley and Jade Cargill takes that unpredictability to another level. A major storyline gets destroyed before it begins. A rising star has to completely change direction. An established veteran faces an uncertain future. And somehow, out of all that chaos, the company has to create compelling television that keeps audiences engaged and coming back for more. That's the challenge facing everyone involved, and how they respond to that challenge will define this chapter of the women's division for better or worse. If you found this breakdown valuable and want more insider perspectives on the biggest wrestling stories, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you catch every upload.